We're just a few weeks into 2018, but so far the new Maze Runner has the best action scene of the year.
We're coming up behind!
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and Maze Runner The Death Cure is the third and final installment in the Maze Runner franchise. All three were directed by Wes Ball and at least co-written by T.S. Novellin. And of course they are adaptations of the popular young adult novel line created by James Dashner. There are still other titles coming out in the near future, but I think what you can call the wave of teen dystopia films is ebbing down. The Hunger Games are behind us, the final Divergent entry will end up as a TV movie because the last one wasn't successful enough. City of Ember, City of Bones, The Giver, The Fifth Wave and The Host are already kind of forgotten, and now we get the finale of Maze Runner. I was never a fan of all those movies, but then again, I'm really not a target audience, and I don't think any one of them really stands out. Catching Fire is probably the one I like most. I thought the first Maze Runner was alright, but I didn't like it enough to even give the second one a chance. Now it's January, there aren't really that many new releases, and I thought I will give The Death Cure a try. And you know what? At least in the beginning I was completely hooked. From a long, in the open establishing shot that brings us back into this desert wasteland, we enter an exciting and beautiful and gritty filmed action scene. There's a train where some of the so-called gliders are held prisoners. There are two pickup trucks, each manned with two of our heroes, and there's a giant military aircraft by the evil Wicked Corporation that's guarding their transport. This was very reminiscent of films like Mad Max or even Logan, and it combined many known tropes like jumps from one vehicle to another, decoupling wagons to escape, luring an overwhelming foe into an ambush, and so forth. But it's well choreographed and shot in a visual way that grabs your interest right from the start. Unfortunately, the movie never reaches this early excitement again. Later on there's another very engaging action scene that involves another prison break scenario, but with a bus instead of a train, and overall the action of The Death Cure was easily the best part of it, because the story itself and the characters never excel that area of generic mediocrity.
Mediocre!
The story continues directly where the second one left off, and don't worry, while I haven't watched it, I read what happened so far, which is of course a very handicapped way of approaching a sequel, but to be honest, sometimes I like the feeling of just jumping into a story that I know very little about. To my surprise, everything was very easy to follow, especially in comparison to the big mystery aspect that the first film brought to the table. The actual story of The Death Cure is quite simple. Thomas and his friends want to break free Min-ho, who was captured at the end of the last film and who is now being further experimented on by Wicked, which is primarily led by Patricia Clarkson and Aidan Gillen's characters, while the love interest Teresa is also working for them with kind of good intentions. The story is very straightforward most of the time, and that's not a bad thing, but there's almost zero character development and most of them don't have any outstanding traits anyway. Probably the more charming one being Thomas Brodie-Sangster's character Newt and Rosa Salazar's Brenda. Especially the latter and her banter with Giancarlo Esposito's Rosa was a highlight for me. The main protagonist on the other hand was never one that appealed to me. Dylan O'Brien kind of grounds the movie with his very calm nature, but his character Thomas is also so very bland and uninteresting and rather uncharming as well. There's really not much to say about him apart from his heroic behavior being there for his friends. But that alone doesn't make an interesting hero. I really don't want to say anything bad about the actor. Dylan O'Brien was in a very heavy accident and that's the reason why the whole movie was postponed a whole year. I'm happy that he's fine again, but the character of Thomas isn't doing anything for me. The movie also shares a key problem with something like The Hunger Games. The first one has a very distinct idea, a very high concept premise. A group of young people who are trapped in some kind of maze, who don't know why they are there, nor what exactly the maze is or where it leads to. Now in the final act of the Maze Runner's overarching story there's really Not much left of that, and the story boils down to a very simple good guys versus bad guys scenario with some guerrilla warfare vibe to it. In the trailer and at some point in the movie as well, it sounds like getting into that sealed off cyber city where they held their friend would be kind of a new maze-like obstacle, but it turns out to be pretty easy, and a big chunk of the film takes place in rather forgettable medical facility surroundings with no big surprises or twists. Nothing of the movie is really that bad, but apart from some set pieces and the overall quite enjoyable way it is filmed, it's just very mediocre. It's also pretty loaded with moments that have that bad movie ring to them. The bad guy who just appears out of nowhere, the hooded hero that just shows up like a ghost at a pedestrian crossing, more than one last-minute saving, and so on. The death cure is also quite predictable and without any meaningful character development or a fascinating new twist on the story. With almost 2.5 hour running time, it begins to drag. The most interesting guys for me might have been Barry Pepper's Vince and Walton Goggins' Lawrence. It's those two guys who are giving the big speeches instead of our actual hero, but they are only briefly in the movie. For what it is, it's an okay dystopian action flick that could have been improved with a small injection of fun and charisma. In German I'd say, nach einem grandiosen Einstieg fällt das große Maze Runner Finale dann doch wesentlich unspannender aus, als ich erhofft habe. If you liked the first two movies, you might like this as well. For me, it's just in the middle, and therefore Maze Runner The Death Cure gets a 5 out of 10. It's more like 5.4, but I don't do that. Some of you might already know this segment. Whenever a movie scores less than 6, I give you 3 better flicks. If you want to experience a fantastic post-apocalyptic action film, go see Mad Max Fury Road. If you're looking for a gruesome, claustrophobic scientist zombie movie, watch George A. Romero's Day of the Dead. And my third pick is simply Escape from New York. Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Maze Runner The Death Cure, and also if you're into the Maze Runner franchise in general. You can hit me up on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like, and make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.